AITA for refusing to pay for my niece's wedding after promising to cover it. So, I'm a 35-year-old guy, and I've always been really close with my older sister, Emily 38F, and her daughter, Lily 22F. Let me give you some background. Emily got pregnant when she was just 16, and it completely turned her life upside down. Being a single mom at such a young age, she faced a ton of struggles financially, emotionally, and just trying to navigate the world as a teenager who was also a mother. Our parents were supportive, but it wasn't like we were well off, and a lot of the burden of taking care of Lily fell on Emily. From the moment Lily was born, Emily became this incredibly strong, resilient person, doing everything she could to provide for her daughter. And I, being her younger brother, wanted to help however I could. I was 13 when Lily was born, and I remember feeling a deep sense of responsibility toward her. I spent a lot of my teenage years babysitting, playing with her, and just trying to make her life as joyful as I could. As I got older, I started helping out more financially because Emily worked two jobs most of the time and still struggled to make ends meet. When I started making decent money in my 20s, I wanted to make sure Emily and Lily didn't feel alone. So, I paid for things like Lily's summer camps, her school trips, and even helped with some of their rent when Emily was between jobs. When it was time for Lily to apply to colleges, I was more than happy to step in. I covered her college application fees, helped her with her SAT prep, and when she got into a state school, I gave her some money to help buy a used car. To me, it felt natural. I wanted to give Lily the kind of support that she wouldn't get otherwise. Emily always expressed her gratitude, and honestly, I didn't think twice about it. I loved them both and wanted to help in any way I could. Fast forward to about a year ago, Lily got engaged to her boyfriend of 4 years, Alex. They met during her sophomore year of college, and I thought they made a great couple. Alex is a good guy, kind, hardworking, and I could tell he really cared for Lily. When they announced the engagement at a family dinner, it was this incredibly happy moment. Everyone was cheering, toasting, and Emily was crying tears of joy. I remember getting caught up in the emotion of it all and telling Lily and Alex, "Hey, whatever you need for the wedding, I'd love to help out." I meant it. I really wanted them to have a beautiful day to celebrate their love. Now, I'm gonna be honest, I had no idea that saying whatever you need would be interpreted in the way that it was. At the time, I imagined I'd be helping with the venue deposit or covering the photographer. I thought maybe I'd contribute $10,000, or even a little more if needed, and that'd be that. But I quickly learned that Lily and Emily heard something very different. A few weeks after the engagement dinner, I started hearing bits and pieces of their plans through family conversations. They were talking about a destination wedding, with over 200 guests, and a huge party. I remember thinking, wow, they're going all out. But I figured they had other financial sources, or that maybe Alex's family was contributing too. It wasn't until a few months later, when they began seriously planning and started sending me information about deposits, that I realized they were expecting me to pay for all of it. They'd booked a fancy resort in another state, hired a well-known and very expensive wedding planner, and started sending me lists of photographers and catering services, all with price tags that nearly made my eyes pop out of my head. I sat Emily and Lily down for a conversation. I told them, listen, I'm really happy to help, but I need to be clear on what that means. I can give you $15,000, but that's about all I can do. To me, that felt like a very generous offer. $15,000 is a lot of money, and I thought it would go a long way toward making their day special. Emily and Lily, however, were visibly upset when I told them this. Lily said something like, "But you promised to pay for the wedding, you said you'd help us make it happen." And Emily backed her up, adding, "You've always been there for us, and this is the least you could do." They made me feel like I was suddenly pulling the rug out from under them, like I'd promised to buy them a car and was now only willing to pay for the tires. I was shocked. I explained again that I never meant I'd cover the entire cost of the wedding, especially not a $50,000 plus affair. I thought my offer of $15,000 was very fair, and I stood by that. What happened next really hurt. After that conversation, it felt like Emily and Lily just shut me out. They stopped including me in the wedding planning altogether. I wasn't getting updates, I wasn't being asked for my opinion on anything, and I only heard about their plans secondhand through other family members. It felt like they were punishing me for not giving them what they wanted. I tried reaching out a few times to check in and see how things were going, but I got short, one-word responses. It was like they were too angry to even talk to me. Months went by, and the wedding date was getting closer. Then, a few weeks ago, Emily called me out of the blue, crying. She said they were in a really tough spot because they'd gone ahead and booked everything thinking I'd eventually come around and cover it all. Now, they were realizing they couldn't afford the rest of the expenses. They were going to lose deposits, and they didn't know how they'd pay for the rest. Emily kept saying I'd ruined the wedding by backing out and not following through on my promise. She said Lily wasn't speaking to me because she felt humiliated. Apparently, the groom's family had been under the impression that the whole wedding was covered, and now it looked like they'd have to downsize everything or even cancel. Hearing this was incredibly frustrating. I told Emily, as calmly as I could, that I never promised to pay for the entire wedding, and I felt like they'd put themselves in this situation by assuming I'd foot the bill without ever actually confirming that with me. I reminded her that I'd offered $15,000, which was still on the table, but that was all I could do. Emily kept crying, saying that $15,000 wouldn't be enough to cover what they needed at this point, and she accused me of being manipulative, offering to help and then taking it away at the last second to make them look bad. The thing that really hurts is that I genuinely wanted to help. I never imagined my offer would lead to this much drama and resentment. I feel like I've always been there for Emily and Lily, and I've done everything I could to support them over the years, but now, I'm being made out to be the villain because I set a boundary. I didn't think it was unreasonable to cap my contribution at $15,000, especially since I have my own financial responsibilities and life to think about. It's not like I'm rich. I've saved up a good amount over the years, but I can't just drop $50,000 on a wedding without it seriously affecting my finances. Emily and Lily are acting like I betrayed them, and they've even brought other family members into it. I've had cousins and aunts calling me, saying that I should just help them out since I led them on, and it's not fair to Lily to have her dream wedding ruined. It seems like everyone is taking their side, and I feel really alone in this. It's made me question whether I did something wrong, whether my initial offer was misleading, or if I should have been more explicit from the start. But at the same time, I feel like they should have clarified what they were expecting before going ahead and booking such an extravagant wedding. I feel like I've done more than enough for them over the years, and now I'm being punished for not being able to give more. It's exhausting, and honestly, it makes me sad because I love them both so much. I've always thought of Lily almost like a daughter, and now she won't even speak to me because I won't pay for this huge wedding she wants. After a couple of restless nights and endless thoughts swirling in my head, I decided that enough was enough. I needed to sit down with Emily and have a real conversation about this. I couldn't stand the idea of my relationship with her and Lily disintegrating like this, especially over something I genuinely felt had been a huge misunderstanding. The tension had been eating away at me, and I wanted answers. I needed to know how things had spiraled so out of control. So, I called Emily and asked if we could meet. I suggested we talk face to face, without the distractions of texts or phone calls. I wanted to see my sister and hopefully clear the air. She agreed, though her tone was hesitant, almost guarded, which only added to the knot in my stomach. We decided to meet at her house that weekend, while Lily was out, because I figured it would be easier if it was just the two of us. The day came, and I drove over to Emily's place, my mind running in 1,000 different directions. I kept replaying all the conversations we'd had over the years, trying to figure out where things had gone wrong. I arrived at her house, parked my car, and sat there for a moment to gather myself. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my nerves. It felt like I was about to walk into a confrontation I wasn't fully prepared for, but I knew it was something that had to happen. Emily opened the door when I knocked, and she looked tired. Her eyes were red, and I could tell she'd been crying. She gave me a half-hearted smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. I stepped inside, and we made our way to the living room. It felt strange. There was a heavy silence between us, a far cry from the usual warmth and comfort I'd always felt in her presence. We sat down, and for a moment, neither of us said anything. I could feel my heart pounding, and I could tell that she was struggling to find the right words too. Finally, I broke the silence. Emily, I need to understand what's going on here. I feel like everything has just gotten so out of control. I love you and Lily, and I never meant for things to get to this point. But I really need to know, how did we get here? When I said I'd help, I never meant I'd cover everything, and I feel like that got lost somewhere. Emily sighed deeply, and she looked away for a moment, like she was trying to gather her thoughts. Then she turned back to me, her expression a mixture of frustration and sadness. You said you'd help us, and we took that to mean you'd pay for the wedding, she said quietly, her voice trembling a bit. You've always been there for us, and you've always supported Lily, no matter what. You paid for her camps, her car, her college stuff. So when you said you'd help with the wedding, we thought you'd be doing the same thing. We thought you'd take care of it. I frowned, trying to keep my voice as gentle as possible. Emily, I understand that I've helped a lot over the years, but this is a wedding. It's a huge expense, and I never promised to pay for everything. I said I'd help, but there's a big difference between helping and covering the entire cost. I offered $15,000, which I thought was a lot of money. Emily's eyes filled with tears again, and she shook her head. But $15,000 isn't enough, not for what we've already planned. We already put deposits down, and now we can't pay for the rest. We thought you'd come through. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. I could feel the frustration building inside me, but I didn't want this to turn into a shouting match. Emily, did you ever plan to contribute any money to the wedding? I asked, or did you just assume I'd pay for all of it? She looked at me, her eyes widening slightly, and then she glanced down at her hands. Her silence spoke volumes, but eventually, she answered. We didn't plan to put in any money, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. We thought you'd take care of it, like you always have. I closed my eyes for a moment, feeling a mix of disbelief and sadness wash over me. Emily, I wish you would have talked to me before making all these plans. I feel like I've been completely blindsided. I never agreed to cover everything, and now it's like you're expecting me to fix a situation I had no part in creating. There was another long pause, and I decided to ask the question that had been nagging at me for days. What about Alex's parents? I said. Have they offered to contribute anything? Emily looked up at me, and there was a flicker of something guilt, maybe. In her eyes, she hesitated before answering. They offered $20,000, but we told them it wasn't necessary because you said you'd take care of it. I stared at her, feeling my stomach drop. My mouth opened, but no words came out at first. I was in shock. They had $20,000 offered to them, and they turned it down because they were so sure I'd cover everything. It felt like the ground had just shifted beneath me. I leaned back in my chair, running a hand through my hair, trying to process what she'd just said. Emily, are you serious? I finally managed to say, my voice thick with disbelief. You told them not to contribute because you assumed I'd pay for everything? Without even confirming that with me, and now you're in this mess, and it's somehow my fault. She flinched at my words, and tears started streaming down her face again. We didn't think it would be a problem, she said, her voice breaking. We thought you'd want to give Lily the wedding she deserves. I felt my frustration boil over at that point. I stood up, pacing the room, as I tried to keep my emotions in check. Emily, I've done so much for you and Lily over the years because I love you both. I wanted to help, and I've never regretted any of it. But this is different. You didn't even think to ask me if I could afford it. You just assumed, and now I'm the bad guy for not living up to an expectation that I never agreed to the first place. Emily was sobbing now, her face buried in her hands, and I felt my heart twist. I hated seeing her like this. I hated that things had come to this point. But I also knew I needed to stand my ground. I couldn't just magically come up with $50,000 to cover the rest of the wedding. After a few minutes, I sat back down, taking a deep breath. Emily, I'm sorry things have turned out this way. I really am. But I can't give you more than $15,000. That's all I can do, and it's already more than I should be giving, considering my own financial responsibilities. I wish you would have talked to me before making these plans. I want Lily to have a beautiful wedding, but I can't be the only one carrying this burden. Emily wiped her tears, her face red and blotchy. She looked at me, her eyes filled with pain and maybe a hint of understanding. I just wanted Lily to have her dream wedding, she said, her voice cracking. I nodded, my own eyes stinging. I get that. I really do. But sometimes, we have to adjust our dreams to fit reality. I'm still here to help, but I can't do it all. Maybe it's time to reconsider some of the plans and make things work with what you have. Emily didn't say anything for a while. She just nodded, her shoulders slumping in defeat. I could see how much this was hurting her, and it broke my heart. I wanted nothing more than to fix everything, to make it all better like I had so many times before. But this time, I couldn't. This time, they had gone too far, and I wasn't in a position to save the day. We sat there in silence for a long time, both of us lost in our thoughts. Eventually, I stood up, feeling the weight of the conversation pressing down on me. I love you, Emily, I said softly, and I love Lily. I hope you know that. I need you to understand where I'm coming from. She looked up at me, her eyes still brimming with tears. I know, she whispered. I wish things were different. I nodded, my throat too tight to say anything else. I turned and left the house, my heart heavy. As I got into my car and drove away, I couldn't shake the feeling of sadness that had settled over me. I hated that things had come to this point. I hated that my relationship with my sister and my niece was now strained because of money and misunderstandings. After I left Emily's house that day, I spent the next few days with a constant knot in my stomach. I felt like I was walking through a fog, unable to fully concentrate on anything. The weight of my family's disappointment sat heavily on my chest, and even though I knew I hadn't promised to cover the entire cost of the wedding, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd somehow let them down. One evening, as I was sitting on my couch, absent-mindedly flipping through TV channels, my phone rang. I glanced at the screen and saw Lily's name. My heart sank. I hadn't heard from her directly in weeks, and the silence had been painful. Part of me wanted to ignore the call, afraid of what she might say, but I knew I couldn't do that. I took a deep breath and answered. Hey, Lily, I said, trying to sound as calm as possible. Hi, Uncle, she replied, her voice sounding strained. There was a pause, and then she continued. Look, the wedding is coming up soon, and I really need the money you promised. I felt my stomach drop. Lily, I told you I can give $15,000. That's all I can afford. I never promised to pay for everything. She sighed loudly, and I could hear the frustration in her voice. But you said you'd help, and we planned everything based on that. You knew how important this was to me, and now you're backing out. Do you know how that makes me look? The groom's family thinks you're covering everything, and now we're stuck. You're putting me in such a difficult position. I was stunned. Lily, I didn't promise to cover the whole wedding. I said I'd help, and $15,000 is a lot of money. I wish I could do more, but I can't just pull 50 grand out of nowhere. You're not understanding, she almost shouted. This is my wedding, Uncle, the one day that's supposed to be perfect. I thought you cared enough to make it happen for me. I was speechless. I had always loved Lily like my own daughter, and to hear her say that I didn't care enough broke my heart. Lily, I do care. I care so much, and I've always been there for you. But I can't afford this, and it hurts me that you think I'm doing this to spite you. She didn't say anything for a moment, and then I heard her sniffle. I just thought you'd come through for me, she whispered before hanging up. I sat there for a long time, staring at my phone, feeling the weight of her words. I knew that, no matter what I said, she wouldn't understand. To her, this was about love and support, and to me, it was about realistic expectations and financial boundaries. It seemed we were just talking past each other, and it left me feeling utterly defeated. The next few days were even worse. My phone started blowing up with calls and messages from other family members, cousins, aunts, even some family friends. They all had the same message. How could you do this to Lily? It turned out that Lily had told everyone that I'd promised to pay for her dream wedding and that now I was backing out, leaving her in a financial mess. It seemed like everyone had already made up their minds that I was the villain of this story, and nothing I said made any difference. I felt cornered, alone, and completely misunderstood. It was as though all the years I had supported Lily and Emily had been erased in everyone's eyes because of this one disagreement. I didn't know what else to do, so I decided to go to the one place where I might find some common ground: the groom's family. I reached out to the groom's parents and asked if we could meet. They were surprised to hear from me, but they agreed. We met at a small cafe not far from where they lived. When I walked in, they were already seated, looking a bit nervous. I introduced myself and sat down. "Thank you for meeting with me," I said, trying to steady my voice. I wanted to talk about the wedding and clear up some misunderstandings. The groom's mother, Carol, looked at me sympathetically. "We've heard a bit about what's going on," she said carefully. "Lily told us you were covering the entire wedding, and we offered to help, but she insisted that it wasn't necessary." I sighed, rubbing my temples. "That's exactly why I wanted to talk to you. I never promised to pay for everything. I said I'd help, and I offered $15,000, but it seems that got lost in translation. I just can't afford the kind of wedding they're planning." Carol exchanged a look with her husband, Tom, who nodded. "We were willing to contribute $20,000, Tom said, "but Lily and Emily were very clear that you were covering everything. Honestly, we thought it was odd, given the cost." I felt a mix of relief and embarrassment. I wish they'd taken you up on your offer. I just don't have $50,000 to give. There was a pause, and then Carol leaned forward. "Look, we want this to work out for everyone. We love our son, and we know he loves Lily. We're willing to put in $25,000 if that helps make this easier for you." I felt a wave of gratitude, though it was tinged with unease. I had come here hoping for some understanding, and now they were offering to help shoulder the financial burden. "Thank you," I said, my voice cracking slightly. "I really appreciate that. I just want Lily to be happy, but I also need to be realistic about what I can do." We discussed some details, and eventually, we agreed that we would each contribute $25,000. It wasn't ideal for me. I had been clear from the beginning that $15,000 was my limit, but I felt like I had no other option. I wanted to keep the peace, and I wanted Lily to have her day without this rift between us. A few days later, Lily called me again. This time, her tone was completely different. "Uncle, I just wanted to say thank you," she said softly. "I know it was hard for you, but it means the world to me that you're coming through for us. I really love you, and I'm so grateful you're making this happen." I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath. "Lily, I need you to understand something," I said gently. "I never promised to pay for the entire wedding. I said I'd help, and I meant it. But the way this all went down, it's been really hard for me. I've always wanted to support you, but I can't give more than I have." There was a pause, and then she replied, "But you did promise, Uncle. You always said you'd be there for me, and this is what I need now. I know it's a lot, but you're making my dream come true, and that's all that matters." I felt my heart sink. It was clear that, in her mind, my love and support were tied to the money I could provide. It hurt, but I didn't have the energy to argue anymore. "Okay, Lily," I said quietly. "I just hope you know how much I care about you, regardless of all this." She hesitated for a moment, then said, "I do, Uncle. I really do. And thank you for everything." I felt like I had lost something important in all of this: a sense of trust, a sense of mutual understanding. I had always wanted to be the supportive uncle, the one they could rely on, but now it felt like my worth was measured only by the money I could give. It was a heavy realization, and it left me feeling emptier than I ever thought possible. Am I AITA because I didn't pay for the entire wedding?